That's the second time in a row Tottenham have had to come back from being down to salvage some sort of draw from a game. We had Wolves at the weekend and now Bodø Glimt in the Champions League. And if we're being honest with ourselves, Thomas Frank has got a few issues he needs to fix. If you haven't been here before, my name is Achillea, and in this season we're going on a tactical journey and just understand the game a bit more. And this season I'm analysing games to see how well or poor Spurs do and see how it changes across the season to understand what someone like Thomas Frank thinks when deciding how to manage Tottenham Hotspur. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the Bodø Glimt game in the Champions League, and it's safe to say there are some issues that definitely need addressing. But if you want to come on this journey with me, then please make sure to like and subscribe down below. I know it's been a while since I last uploaded. It's just so happened that after each game beforehand, I've had something that I needed to do that evening or the next day, and I've just not had time. But we're back, and we're back with our trusty friend, the tactics board. We will be going and looking at some key moments in the match as well. But here you can see how Spurs started off this game. But as we've learned and as we understood on this channel now, this is not how Spurs look throughout the whole game. We look different depending on whether we have the ball and whether we're out of possession. Now, typically in the game, we were defending or, out of possession in a 4-4-2 that would more often than not look something like this. And this is slightly different to what we're used to seeing with Spurs when defending in the 4-4-2, and I'll explain why. Sarr would shift along, Bergvall would sort of fill in the middle, and Odegaard would actually move from the left to quite centrally actually, and sort of press with Richie in the front too. Now this did change fairly often, and in one simple way was the fact that sometimes Spence pressed high up, and now this is because we're going man to man. So if his man was up here and what needed to get the ball, typically what would happen is Spence actually became a part of that sort of middle four. Van der Ven would shift to the left, Danzo would come in, and I think typically Bentancur would actually almost become a centre-back in this sort of situation. Sarr would move along. Let's just move people up to make it a bit more realistic. This is sort of how it would end up looking if Spence was the one that was pressing his man who had the ball, who would be I think he was the right back at the time, or the right, I think it was the right back actually. Normally, we would defend in a 4-4-2, but in fact, it would be in the number 10. What we'll normally see is our left back, Spence in this scenario, would still be the left back position. Our left winger would sort of be in the left mid. Sarr, Bentancur, maybe that's Palhinha, Bentancur, whoever it may be, sort of form the two in the middle. And our number 10, who was Bergvall in this instance, would normally press up and help out the striker. We saw that against City. We've seen that in multiple games. We experimented slightly, and I think it caused some issues for us, and we're going to see some real world examples of this in a second. It wasn't necessarily the shape per se that was the issue, because we've defended in this 4-4-2 shape before. I think the issue started to come with Odegaard being the one pressing in the front two. Spence, who is supposed to be our best 1v1 defender, was much higher up the pitch. And not only that, and it's not specifically about Spence, it's the whole team. The whole press in general was just very slow. It didn't have the same aggression as it did against Man City. We were still going man for man, but you could tell the way we were pressing Bodø Glimt just felt that little bit more like a jog. It was like, yeah, I'm there, but I'm not really applying that much pressure to you. So it was quite easy for them to pass around us. So I think it's best we get into some examples so we can see this in real time. So I think it's probably best for us just to go through the match and just to see what was happening, what was going wrong, what was going right. And for this first example, it's early in the game. We could sort of see our pressing shape. You can see that we are going man for man. Fine, we've seen this sort of style before. I think we're just doing it with different players. It goes back to the goalkeeper and then played forward after Richie's gone towards the goalkeeper, and they're in acres of space. Look at that. You see what I mean? Like, there's no real push to try and win the ball back properly. It was sort of Richarlison running by himself, everyone else just standing somewhat near their player. They drive forward, play a long ball towards I believe this was one of their strikers or their wingers, who then plays it into the middle, and this is good. Bergvall actually wins the ball back, and we get probably our only decent chance of the game, and it was this early on, where he drives forward and plays a ball to Richie at the back post. Now, where we've got to give Richie some leeway is the defender does get a touch onto it. He was not prepared for it, and he kind of has a sloppy left-footed effort, which was, I can't even really call it a shot. It almost looked like he passed back to the goalkeeper. But Glenn Hoddle said this after the match, and I completely agree with him as well, actually. The best strikers in the world have an instinct to react to moments like this. Richie would have easily have seen in this moment beforehand that the defender was going to get a touch on this ball. If this was Harry Kane, if this was Mbappe, and I know I'm talking about the best players in the world, but It's just for comparison's sake. When you're talking about the top nines in the world, they are there and ready to react to this moment. And I get this isn't the easiest in the world, but we've had Harry Kane at this club before, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that if Harry Kane was in that same sort of situation, he is ready and prepared for the player to get a touch onto it and to react better. So look, it's not a... I'm not super criticising him. It is a difficult thing to do. I just think some of the better nines in the world are able to react quicker in this instance and maybe get a better chance off. Again, the distance between them and the player on the ball, acres of space in the middle here, is able to drive forward, play an easy pass into the middle, and gets recycled out wide to the left. Again, Johnson's not really that close to the player. It gets played out wide. All right, you've got to cover up the gap because the player on the ball now could easily drive in the middle. Fair enough. But for me, it's about the reaction to when it goes back towards the defensive player here. Look where Johnson is here in this instance. The ball gets played. He has barely moved compared to the distance the ball has had to travel. And then, look, again, I'm going to put the marker there. The ball's been played off and he's moved maybe a feet across. This happened throughout the match of just jogging, pressing. It wasn't enough, in my opinion, to actually try and get the ball back. It was just more about, can we sit in this shape and just ride the pressure? And I just personally don't think it was good enough. Now, as I said before, typically out of possession, we would defend in a 4-4-2. However, when they were starting to get in these dangerous areas, and we've seen this again throughout preseason and other matches, we sort of slop into a back five. So you can see Bentancur here is sort of sitting with the defense, and we would instead become more of like a 5-4-1. However, but like I said so many times already, because we weren't that aggressive, they were just finding it so easy to pass through us. You can see the ball coming into the number 10 here, plays it back out wide, and everyone's standing in their positions. You've got two forwards ready to attack the space in between Bentancur and Danzo, and Bentancur and Van der Ven. There was no real want or need to actually target the ball. I mean, it comes across. This player here is able to flick it on with his heel towards the back post, and it was a bit of a scuffed effort, but we're just conceding dangerous chances from not aggressively wanting to win the ball back, which is completely different to the Man City game. The Man City game, it was all similar shapes to what we were doing here. It was all very much, we're going to defend sort of deep, we're going to soak up some pressure and then hit you on the counter. But the way we won our duels against Man City was just so much more aggressive. We wanted it more. Here, it just felt a little bit lackluster. Now, after that early Richarlison miss, we had pretty much no other chance. This is the closest we got. And it was actually a good drive from Odegaard, but I just want to highlight the importance of not having a number 10 to link up play through the middle. Odegaard receives the ball from Spence in this area. Look, a big gap to fill where easily someone like Xavi Simons would have been in support, and we're going to see later on in this video exactly how that changed in the second half when he came on. But he receives the ball in this sort of position, and there's just no real support here apart from Spence, who is our left back. Richie, by instruction, needs to stay sort of in the box, ready to hopefully receive the ball after this combination. Bergvall is driving forward, but not as aggressively because, like we said at the beginning of the video, he wasn't a number 10 that was pressing with Richarlison this time. He was actually sort of a little bit deeper than he has been in previous matches. Sarr, again, helping out and playing almost as a 6 whenever Bentancur went forward to assist, and they sort of rotate every now and again. But without a number 10 on the pitch in the first half, Spence and Odegaard had to sort of work together. Spence often drove in the middle, inverting, and had to help him out. Unfortunately, Odegaard just had to turn without anyone else there to assist him. He had 4 yellow players around him and had to drive. And it was a good drive forward, but at the end of the day, it just sort of went out for a corner as he tried to cross into the box. It's one minor moment, but that was quite literally the only other quote-unquote chance we really had in that first half. It kind of shows how dire our chance creation was outside of set pieces. So we're going to circle back to that and why I think a number 10 is so important for Spurs. Now, I want to look at this example, and this was towards the end of the first half. And this was a bit of a combination of lack of aggressive pressing, poor build-up play, leading to a very dangerous chance, which against maybe some better opposition, we probably would have conceded a goal. Now we're starting all the way at the back. Their fullback has the ball in this position. And Sarr stuck to his man. He's actually got in front of him to kind of cut the short pass, which I understand. That's probably the immediate danger that you're thinking. Unfortunately, they play a long ball over to this number 10 that's by himself in the middle, who actually receives the ball. And now Sarr's man has gone ahead of him and is ready to start a dangerous attack. So he gets the ball fed through to him. Sarr's lost him. Van der Ven's obviously worried about the player out wide. And then all of a sudden, Bodø Glimt are through on goal. Now, Mickey van der Ven does what Mickey van der Ven does, recovers the ball, gets it back to Vicario. But this is where our build-up becomes a bit of an issue. The ball gets played forward into Sarr in this position here. Now, what we don't have, and again, this is back to the number 10 issue not being on the pitch, we don't have a midfielder on this pitch at this current moment wanting to receive the ball in the middle of the pitch. This is a big problem for Spurs. Unfortunately, I think Bentancur, in my opinion, hides in possession a bit too much. There's no desire for him to demand the ball because Sarr has turned into the space. He's got space around him. He can drive forward a bit. Bentancur should peel away a little bit into the space, demand the ball. We don't have a number 10 in this sort of area to be able to pass through the middle either. And unfortunately, that means that Sarr makes a decision in this position to go backwards towards Van der Ven in this sort of position, which is not ideal. We want to be able to drive forward quickly. That's the whole point of, sitting deep, collecting the ball, and then being able to hit on the counter. They've got 4 men attacking us quite high. We had a good chance to go forward here, but unfortunately we go back to Van der Ven, and Van der Ven has the ball on the left, and he's got the only option, which is what Bodø have actually forced us to do, is to pass down the left-hand side towards Jed Spence. There are a couple of issues in this scenario. One, Spence is obviously not naturally left-footed, whereas Udogie is, which means creating and building up down the left-hand side isn't as easy to do because Spence will have a natural instinct to want to drive through the middle so he can use his right foot or be able to cut in and use his right foot. He's immediately under pressure in this sort of scenario. And again, the lack of 10 here means there is no one in this area whatsoever wanting to be able to receive the ball off of him and create play. And we're going back to the basics of football here a little bit, but if we take it back to the tactical board for 1 second, what you ideally want in any scenario is 2 options. Now, you can create a sort of triangle shape here. It's never going to be exact, but this is just to illustrate it. You ideally want a scenario where you've got 2 possible options. You want to be able to play inwards towards a more attacking player. You could play backwards to Van der Ven, but then you always want to look to rotate. So say there was an option to go back to Van der Ven. He could drive the ball forward into this space. Spence could move up. Sarr could rotate. And you see how it's just constant triangles. You'd either have 2 players on the outside lane and one sort of inside a little bit here. It could be the other way around. You could have Spence is the one that's outside here. And you've got 2 players in the middle here that you're able to combine with. But the whole general premise is you need 2 other players to help combine with in and around where you are to be able to build up effectively. And unfortunately, in this sort of situation, Spence receives the ball and there's just no one. There's no number 10 getting involved here to build up with. Obviously, Van der Ven's laid the long pass through to him anyway, so it's a little bit more difficult, but there's Sarr's too far away to help as well. And to be credit to Bodø Glimt, look, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're making it very difficult for him to play out of here, especially when he doesn't have a left foot. And they're covering the pass back to Van der Ven as well. So I'll give credit to them where credit's due, but we just seem to have this issue where it's hard to make combinations and build up when we're receiving the ball in these sort of areas. And unfortunately, without the support and with the pressure from Bodø Glimt players, Spence then loses the ball and then we're going to have to set up and defend again. And this little situation here, I can't play the video, but they walked it around. This player here had the ball, was standing still. They were standing still. We were Odebel was jogging back. Spence was jogging into somewhat of a recovery position. They were just knocking and passing it slowly. This guy stood on the ball for a little bit. And this is what I mean by the pressing was just so weak, in my opinion. They play it back again. No one's really super tight to him. Easy passes to go back round. Again, no one anywhere near him. Foot on the ball, inviting the pressure. No one's coming towards him. It's simple. Spence is out here covering this position here. That's his man, and it has been for the last 10 seconds or so. In fact, he actually gets further away from him in this situation, and the ball gets played along out wide again, and the guy's just slowly building up. Ball gets played through. Spence, in a way, standing in no man's land, not keeping an eye on where the player's running. Ball comes across, and they have a very dangerous chance to score, and somehow manages to sky it when he's free in the box. And to be honest, it's half time at this point, and my main thoughts, and I actually jotted it down on my notes here, is that it just felt like we had no personality about us, and that was whether we wanted to win the ball back. There was none of that, like, as I've said multiple times, there was none of that aggression. Whether it was about when we had the ball and we were driving forward, we just weren't threatening. There was no one wanting to demand being on the ball, whether that was a midfielder or a forward. This is the stuff that we really over-rely on for players like Mohamed Kudus. It's just a keyword that keeps popping into my mind, and that's just no personality to really want to win this game. Nonetheless, we move on to Bodo's first goal. Now, this is a beautifully thread through ball that goes between Bentancur and Sarr, and they turn in space. Do I need to show more examples of poor pressing? Fine, I guess I'm going to have to, because it's what leads to the goal. Ball gets played out wide. Johnson is coming back to track back with Pedro Porro. Dangerous 4 players in this sort of scenario. Now, Johnson, in this instance, is doing neither of 2 things. The first immediate danger when the ball's out here is the man's escaped him and is forward. There easily could have been a ball played forward here, and the Bodø Glimt player is through on goal. He's already through and could easily put a cross in. So he's not doing that because he's kind of jogging a bit backwards. And I imagine that's probably because he sees the threat on the edge of the area, which is fine. But unfortunately for him, he's kind of getting caught in no man's land here, where he's having to mark 3 players. So that's not all on him. But the ball wasn't fed through to the number 19. However, Johnson does get done in and goes with Pedro Porro to mark the overlapping player, and just leaves huge space in for their forward to just have a shot on goal. And this is what I mean by the sort of non-aggressive defending. The poor pressing just creates too much space, too many dangerous chances, and it was a well-deserved goal from Bodø Glimt and a great finish. Now, we did say earlier we were going to look at what a difference having a number 10 makes to us on the pitch, and here we are. This is around the 60th minute. This is roughly when Xavi Simons came on, and almost instantly, like, look, I don't want to pretend like he was like this some messiah and he completely changed the game, because I still think he's finding his feet at Spurs. But there was a small difference that really helped us. This was one of his first actions in the game. He receives the ball from Bentancur in the middle of the pitch, something we were not really doing throughout the match. In the first half, it was such an over-reliance on playing out wide and trying to build up that way, but we weren't really doing it that well. We finally had a player attacking the centre of the pitch, which Frank said in so many interviews in the past is how you're going to get goals, get into better positions to create the best XG, the best chances to score. And that just means attacking through the middle of the pitch. Now, he drives forward, and Odegaard is now not the one having to do this because he's out on the left, and he can be a bit of a threat as well. And this is what I was saying earlier about not having the combination. Do you remember that example earlier that I told you about, where it was Spence and Odegaard by themselves in this position, where Odegaard didn't really have anyone else to link up with? He just had Spence there, so we had to drive forward, and the best he got was a corner for us. Now, in this sort of scenario, he now has 2 players. This is the triangle that I was talking about as well. It's so basic, but it was mental how much we weren't doing it in our build-up in the first half. You simply have 2 options. Odegaard's on the ball here. He's got an option in sort of inside backwards towards Xavi Simons. He's got an option forward to Spence. It creates dangerous chances. This time he goes back to Xavi Simons, who does a nice little drop of the shoulder to drive sort of centrally inwards and wins the foul. It's something minor. He wins us the free kick, but it's just mental the difference it made having a pure number 10 on the pitch that was able to link up with your fullback, with your winger to create better chances. We had none of that in the first half because we didn't have a number 10 on the pitch. Now, the final point that I want to make, and this is to do with the equaliser that we managed to get at the end. So, it's a couple of final points actually. One, I think it's great that we showed the resilience yet again not to lose a game. However, I do think we shouldn't have been in this position in the first place. It's the same for Wolves. It's the same for Bodø Glimt. I get it. They're a tough team to play. It's midweek in the Champions League. It's not as easy as it looks on paper. But realistically, with where we should be aiming, we need to be winning these matches. And it's the same for Wolves. We absolutely have to be winning the matches against Wolves at home. So I applaud the resilience, to come back, especially from 2-0 down, away from home, to get the draw. But realistically, we should never have been in that position in the first place, and we should be able to beat these teams without having to sit in a deep low block and just relying on set pieces. I do just want to say another point as well, and I think football is about relationships, and it was kind of leading on to that last point as well. When I showed you the example with Xavi Simons, Jed Spence and Odegaard there, they were able to combine a little bit, and that will come with time. But what I really like is I think Porro and Kudus early on this season already have built a very good relationship at Spurs. They've created so many more chances than any other player in our side on that right-hand side. And I think they've got a good thing going there. And you really shows the difference when Kudus is playing versus when he's not as well. So this equaliser, we've got Danzo at the back. He goes out wide to Kudus. It's something as very simple as Porro not being as defensive as he was in the first half because he knows he's got a stronger right winger in Kudus. Kudus' strength was unbelievable, as usual, where he'd have two men on him regularly and he was still able to come away with the ball. Porro, you can instantly see when the ball goes out wide to Kudus, he knows and he's got more trust in Kudus than he did with Johnson to be able to retain possession and create. So he makes a darting run forward, and first time, Kudus knocks it back to Porro. They combine really well on that right-hand side. Porro and Kudus then on the right. Gray makes a nice little run into the space here, actually, and Porro threads the ball through to Gray, who obviously sets up the goal. It ends up going down as an own goal, but it's a nice little ball towards Richarlison. Goalkeeper sort of ricochets off their defender and goes in the goal and creates the goal. But I think this is the key, is the relationships the players are forming is going to be so important for our attack getting better. It's not just about tactical build-up patterns. It's about, can the players trust each other to build up? I don't think Porro has that with Johnson. We saw that throughout the whole of the first half because, unfortunately, as much as I think Johnson is brilliant at arriving in the box and scoring goals, what he isn't able to do is retain possession and build up with the ball at his feet. And I think Porro has that trust in Kudus a lot more. And on the right-hand side, you can see they're able to combine with speed and with ease because they know where the other player is going to run and create a very dangerous chance. And credit to Gray as well. I think he looked really good when he came on in that position. And yeah, set up the equaliser. I appreciate that was a lot to go through. There was quite a lot of negatives about the game, but obviously some positives as well with the equaliser at the end and the difference having the substitutes of Xavi Simons, Kudus, Palhinha, Gray come on. I just think there was a combination of issues around the pressing not being that great, and I think that was more to do with how aggressively we were pressing versus, or even just winning our duels versus the actual shape itself. But then equally, I think our build-up play has been a big issue for us this season. We're relying on set pieces. I mean, we got our first goal off the back of a set piece, realistically. We got the one that was disallowed off the back of a set piece. And I truly think we're going to have to give time for the players to build the relationships like Kudus and Porro have on that right-hand side. And we need to nail down who that left winger is to allow that to happen. I also think Udogie on the left, being a natural left footer, is able to combine with someone like Odegaard a lot more. In fact, Frankfurt away last season, Udogie and Tel actually combined really well because Tel likes to drive centrally and Udogie likes to overlap, and that seemed to really work. So I'd like to see that going forward. So a lot of things we need to fix and build up to be able to create from open play. We've got Leeds away at the weekend, a tough game. I know, again, on paper it seems easy, but away from home, having played midweek and travelled to Norway, it's going to be interesting to see how Thomas Frank changes from this week. If you like this tactical breakdown, let me know in the comment section down below. Please subscribe if you like this sort of content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.